Welcome to our weekly masterclass, everybody. We're always excited to gather here to Mind for All Seasons on Fridays to learn and to take a deep dive into health-related topics. And I am very excited for today's topic because so many of us have talked about habit formation and how we really set things in motion and accomplish all the things that we intend to do. We joke that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but why do we even joke about things like that? Why is it as humans that it's easier to say that we want to do something than figure out how to actually accomplish it? Well, we are really blessed that one of our members here at Mind for All Seasons is the great John Mitchell. And John has become a friend over the last little while as he and I have shared thoughts together and we've shared insights back and forth. I've learned a great deal from him. He's written a book called The Missing Secret, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about some of the background of writing that book, why he wrote it, and what kinds of things it talks about. But I will just say that in order to make habits really become a reality, we have to learn how to program the subconscious mind because the subconscious mind is really steering the ship of most of the things that we're doing. That's one of the reasons why Jim Rohn said you become the combined average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. They're having an influence on the subconscious mind. And so if we can get more intentional in how we program the subconscious mind, then we get better at accomplishing the things that we want to, whether that's with our health goals or our relationship goals or our spiritual goals or anything else that we have in our lives. So as we get started here, John, I would just like to ask you a kind of a question to kick it off, and then I know you've
Okay.
prepared some great information to share with everyone, and we'll kind of give the floor to you and let you talk through some things for a while. But um, I'll preface my question by just sharing with everyone that you currently are an entrepreneur. You're inspiring 2% of people, so to speak. There are 98% of people that are just sort of going through life on autopilot, and then there are 2% of people that are really intentional and trying to accomplish great things. And you serve the 2%. But you're also a mindset coach for the 18 head coaches at University of Texas. You teach in the business school there, so you're teaching the next generation of business minds at one of the top business schools in the world. So with that preface of, okay, who is this John Mitchell and what kinds of things is he currently involved in? I'll just ask you, how would you describe yourself, John, as far as who you are, kind of outside of the formal intros of the world? Who are you really, and how did life introduce you to this version of yourself?
Well, that's a great question. I'd say the short answer is, in terms of who I am, I feel so blessed for the life that I have that I am all about helping people change their lives. And I think maybe the easiest way is just to roll into my story and 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 you'll understand how I got to where I got. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Well, so I started my career as a CPA, got my degree in accounting, and but by the time I got to be 30, I'm like, boy, I do not want to be an accountant all my life. And so I became an entrepreneur, and the accounting background was great, but I didn't want to do that all my life. And so when I was in my 30s and 40s, I was in like 7 different businesses. And I hit 50, and candidly, I'm just not as successful as I think I should be. And I had two goals in my life: to make enough money so I didn't have to work, and to find the woman of my dreams. And so falling short on both of them at 50. And on the money, I always did pretty well. I always made 200, $300,000 a year. But when I hit 50, I realized that I had to net $1 million a year to have the exceptional life I always dreamed of. And I realize that sounds very materialistic, but that accountant in me, I'm just doing the math to have that exceptional life. I saw the math telling me I needed a net $1 million a year. And then on the girl, I'd never been married, although I did a lot of interviewing. Um, well, I called it interviewing. My friends called it begging, which is probably more accurate. But nevertheless, at 50, I'm like, well, how am I going to change things? And I don't know, it's like 3 months after I turned 50, a pearl of wisdom comes to me. Find the top book in the world on success and apply that book literally word for word to my life. And so I jump out of bed that night as that comes to me and do the research, and I discover something that blew me away. That there's one book that's been read by 150 million people, and it's the top book in the world on success by a factor of 10. And that book is Think and Grow Rich. Well, I'm like, wow, this is perfect. Who knew that it was be so set up? And so I rush out, I buy the book and I read the book, and then I discover the problem. The book says there's a secret for success, but the author only gives us half of the secret. It's on the reader to figure out the other half. So I'm bummed out. I mope around for like 3 weeks, and just one day I just wake up and go, John, just man up, figure out the damn secret. And so I immersed myself in the book, probably read it, I don't know, 20 times over a 2 or 3 month period of time. And I was blessed to figure out the secret and a 12-minute a day technique to apply it. And so I started applying it to a new business I was starting in the reverse mortgage field. And quickly my income starts doubling and doubling and doubling to where approximately 4 years later, I was blessed to be making 25 times the 200 to 300 grand a year I'd been making the prior 20 years. And and what was particularly cool is I could see why it was happening. I mean, I was just playing the game of life at a higher level. I could do things I couldn't do before. I had a level of control over my life I'd never experienced before. And I just became fascinated by the fact that you could take two key scientific principles and apply them to your life and so materially impact your success. And so about 10 years ago, I finally had enough money so I didn't have to work. And I decided I was going to share this with the world. And I meet the former chancellor and president here at the University of Texas, maybe a month or two after I sold my company. And he says, hey, you got to teach this at University of Texas, and why don't we teach it together? And that led to he introduces me to the athletic director, and he says, I want to learn this 12-minute a day technique. And that led to becoming the mental coach for the 18 head coaches, and which I'm, you know, honored to be a part of that. Where, you guys probably don't realize this, but the University of Texas is the top brand in college sports, takes in more money than any other school. And we've been blessed to win the Directors Cup for the last 5 years, and goes to the top athletic program in the country. So it's just such an honor to be surrounded by world-class coaches. And so I teach my methodology at the McCombs School of Business in a class called The Science for Success, the Science of Leveraging Yourself. And I teach my methodology to adults through my book and through licensing it to coaches. So that's the overview of the story.
That's a great story, John. Thank you for sharing that. And I, I think if people were really listening there, what they could hear is you weren't unsuccessful at 50 in the
Right.
eyes of most people, but you weren't okay with where you were. You wanted to grow further, and you thought you'd be further along the path by the time you were 50. And I think regardless of where people are, it's not how much somebody's making or the quality of their relationships or anything. It's Are you accomplishing as much as you feel like you're capable of right now? And if not, what are you going to do about that? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. And I just heard a great Jim Rohn video the other day about the power of going, I've had it. Because when I was at 50, I'm like, I've had it. That's enough. I'm I'm done with the average freaking life. I I I think I have more into me than having the average life, and I've had it. And that was a driving force to cause me to look for what I found was a truly a success formula. And and one thing I would say to everybody here, just think about this. How do you create success in your life? Just think about that. How do you create success in your life? Um, and as you think about that, when I am in person with people, I'll ask them that question, and they'll usually stammer around because nobody's really asked them that question. And I'll repeat what they say and recap it. And then the more pertinent question is, so how's that working for creating the exceptional life? Well, not so well. And what I see is that most people are just winging life. They don't really have an actual way of doing life. They just get up each day, do the best they can, and the effect of it, though, is they continually recreate the past. And the reason they're winging life is because nobody taught them an alternative. They didn't consciously choose to wing life. It's just nobody taught them a way to do life, and that's what I'm going to explain to you guys here in a few minutes. And it takes 12 minutes a day. And so, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, John. So if I could recap, what I'm hearing is, hey, at 50, you weren't where you wanted to be. So you went out, you found the top book on success, Think and Grow Rich, top book by a factor of 10. You read that and you realized this is really good, but there's something missing. I've got to figure out the real missing secret of all of this. And you figured out what that was. You found an organized methodology that takes 12 minutes a day. And when you applied that in your own life, it massively multiplied your results. It allowed you to get out and meet your wife, Ginger, that you've been happily married to for many years now, and to achieve more than you maybe even thought was possible at 50, reading between the lines. And now you've taught that to other people. So if I got that right, that probably leaves people here saying, okay, well, 12 minutes a day isn't too much to invest for great success. What is this methodology? What's that secret that John seemed to find that has helped him and helped so many other people? Can you walk us through kind of
Abs-
what led
Absolutely.
to discovering that secret?
Well, that's a perfect entree to explaining what it is. So, I'll share something really personal with you. Uh, Eric, I don't think I even told you this, but when I was 50, there was a little more going on with me than feeling the scarcity of time. My mom was dying of pancreatic cancer. And so every day after work, I would go to the hospital, and she was in the hospital for like 8 weeks. And so I'd go and I'd hold her hand and love on her, and um, is everything that I could do to keep from breaking down in front of her when I was with her. And so I would go in the cold, dark parking lot, and before I could drive home, I would just cry my eyes out. I mean, 45 minutes, an hour every night. And keep in mind, this is going on for 6 to 8 weeks. And obviously, I'm feeling the impending loss of my mom, but I knew that there was something deeper going on. Well, let me retract that. I don't know that I knew it at the time. I certainly see it now, but when I was going through it, I just never experienced this level of excruciating emotional upheaval every night. And so as this is going on, then I start to be thinking about, well, what is really going on? And sure, I'm losing my mom, but I started to see that I felt like I was letting my mom down with my life. As her life was ending and she was leaving this world, I'm reflective on my life. And I felt like my mom and dad gave me everything. They sent me to Jesuit High School in Dallas, like I mentioned. They sent me to Jesuit High School, I mean to the University of Texas. I didn't have to pay for a thing. And my parents were very middle class. My dad worked for the government, so they didn't have money. But boy, they gave me every advantage. And so, as my mom is leaving this world, all I have to show for my privileged life was an average life. And I hated the average life because I just knew I was capable of so much more. And what I see now is that feeling of let my mom down was like rocket fuel and causing me to go deeper into thinking Grow Rich and figure out the full secret than anybody else on the planet. And so I remember one particular night, it was, I go and see my mom, and this is probably 6 or 7 weeks into it. And so I go and I see her and I love on her and spend time with her. And then I go cry my eyes out in the parking lot. But this night felt special because it was snowing in Dallas, and it doesn't snow very often in Dallas. And so as I start driving home, I see the big snowflakes hitting my windshield, and I get home and I plop myself in my comfy chair and I start to read Think and Grow Rich again. And again, this is probably the 20th time I've read it. And on this particular night, I read, first of all, I read that your daily actions determine your success in each area of your life. The cumulative effect of your daily actions determine your success in your career, in your marriage, in your health. I'm like, okay, I never thought about it in such simple terms, but I buy that. And then I read that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. Huh. Well, by now I'm ready to go to bed, and so I brush my teeth and wash my face and put my little head on the pillow. But I cannot stop thinking about what I just read, that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. And as I'm thinking about it and contemplating it, it felt like a bolt of lightning hit me. I'm like, well, wait a minute. If my daily actions determine my success and 95% of them are unconscious, then I don't control the very thing that's determining my success. And I remember, sitting up in bed and totally a surreal moment. I see the snowflakes falling in the backyard and it's just one of those I'll never forget moments. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Well, then what does control my daily actions? Well, if 95% of them are unconscious, it's my unconscious mind, my subconscious mind, my autopilot. And as I start to realize that, I'm like, oh, um, I see. And the book talks about how the subconscious mind is only influenced by repetition. And so as I start to get that, I'm like, oh, I see why I haven't been more successful. Uh, it's not from lack of drive or not from lack of intelligence, but I've had a false belief about success for 50 years. And that false belief is that I control my daily actions. And I dare say that everybody on this call has that same false belief that I had for 50 years. And so as that sort of hits me, then the full secret of Think and Grow Rich really came to me. And the full secret is this: what you envision in detail with emotion on a daily basis is what shows up in your life. Let me say that again. What you envision in detail with emotion on a daily basis is what shows up in your life. And what that means is you step back from your life and you create immense clarity. Exactly the person you want to be, exactly what you want to accomplish, and precisely how you're going to achieve your clearly defined goals. And then you take that clarity and you put it on a template. Now, putting it on the template will also help you create the clarity. But once you have it on the template, then you feed it to yourself, and you do this every day, first thing, as your new morning routine. Three things then happen. The first thing is you feel this immense sense of control over your life. Well, of course you would. You're feeding the succinct articulation of your desired life to yourself each day. Of course you'd feel control. And then the second thing you experience is greatly enhanced confidence, which is directly a result of the control you feel. And you feel way less stressed because the mind thrives on order. And when you're feeding the succinct articulation of your desired life to yourself each day, it creates immense order. And your attitude is, hey, I got a plan. I'm executing my plan. You're oblivious to all the noise in the background. And then the third thing that happens after approximately 21 days, the science kicks in, the magic happens, and then the right actions happen automatically without thinking. And so that's essentially how it works.
That is a really powerful summation. If we stopped right there and everybody just applied those few things that you described, John, it would be life-changing, I think, for everybody. I want to go back though and ask you a question about something that you didn't say, but I'm really curious about it. You talked about going through the experience with your mother and how
Mhm.
painful that was, and the hours that you spent crying. And part of what was driving that was that you felt like you weren't accomplishing as much as you could, and that was a reflection in a way on her, or how you were living in relation to your mom, how you were taking the good name that you were given and the training that you were given, and bringing that into the world. Not everybody lives with that level of awareness of how their choices are impacting others or reflecting on others, like their parents.
Right.
And I'm curious, John, what was looking back as you were growing up, that you think led to create in you a person who did not just live for yourself, but who was aware of others, and had goals outside yourself and understood how your actions reflect on others?
Well, I think you're giving me more credit than I deserve, candidly, because I I don't think I was overly concerned about other people necessarily. I remember when I have a brother that's 9 years younger than I am, and I remember when I was 9 years old going to the hospital and seeing all those babies, and I'm like, it struck me how precious life is, and how all those babies are going to turn into adults and have different lives. And it just made me appreciate how precious life is. And I think as I evolved through my life, at some point I got, uh, don't worry about changing the world, change your world, and then you can change the world. And that's certainly how I feel today, because I feel like what I I have is truly life changing, and I'm changing the world one person at a time, one class at a time.
Mm,
But I don't think I was overly I just not overly concerned with other people until, oh, I don't know when that exactly changed. I guess when it I mean, feels like a therapy session, but I think it probably changed when I was, I don't know, 54, 55. I remember the first time I netted $1 million a year, and I realized, well, first of all, I realized that only 1/5 of 1% of people are able to do it. Um, and I just realized what a blessing to be to be given the ability to do it, to have found the right business to do it in. And I remember going to out to dinner with Ginger, and we went to the homeless shelter in Austin, and very enlightened. We drive up in my two-seater convertible Jaguar, go down there, and I start to hand, you know, $300 to $500 to each person I can find. And it causes a big stir. I was very unenlightened about that. And so we had to jump in the car and speed away after I did it for 4 or 5 people. But it certainly, at that moment, I'm like, I want to help other people. And I remember starting a foundation for single moms when I made my first million. And so, um, but that's the first recollection I have of really helping other people.
mhm. Well, at the very least, it sounds like you had a strong moral compass even at a young age.
Oh
And
yeah.
you were looking to make the most of your time. Your experiences also remind me a lot about um, a story that I read years ago about one of the miners in the gold rush who went out and he was just expecting to make his fortune. And instead, after months of effort, he was incredibly frustrated because he didn't have any gold nuggets in his pouch. And he finally ran across this old miner that had a pouch that was bulging. And he knew that this old miner had made all kinds of money. And he asked him what his secret was, and the miner opened the pouch, and the younger miner looked in and he saw just a pile of flecks of gold, little tiny flecks that he had seen many times, but he was so busy looking for the huge nugget that he missed
Mhm.
all the gold that was there, and he never mined it. And that old miner just let him know, no, it's finding these on a daily, consistent basis, several times a day, and getting those little tiny flecks of gold that over time add up to an immense fortune. And it sounds like what you're talking about in the secret that you really latched onto is a methodology for mining a fleck of gold every day so that you really can build an abundant life.
Right. Well, and let me explain a couple of things. Maybe first an example of how this plays out on a daily basis, and I also want to cover the science. So, um, here's a story that happened to, I don't know, 3 years ago or so. A client of mine calls me up and he says, "Hey, meet me in San Antonio. I'm bringing my girlfriend. You get Ginger, drive down to San Antonio. It's about an hour away." And so it's around Christmas, and I tell the Ginge, "Okay, meet me at Starbucks at 2 o'clock." She's out and about. I'm out and about. And so I get there a little early and I order a brownie. Well, one of the things I affirm in my 12-minute a day technique is I'm aware of everything I put in my mouth. Well, I start eating that brownie. I'm aware of it. Doesn't taste very good, but I keep on eating it. And so then the gen shows up and we jump in my car, drive to San Antonio, and I'm like, "Babe, I I've lost my appetite and I don't feel very good." And but we go and I come back home that night and I change one word in my life GPS template. And I change it from I'm aware of everything I put in my mouth to I evaluate everything I put in my mouth. And so the next night we go and have Mexican food with her son, and I order the tacos. The tacos are not very good, but this time I'm evaluating everything I put in my mouth. I slide those tacos away, don't have another bite, and that happens automatically without thinking. And I remember laying in bed that night thinking, boy, if that's not a superpower where you can get yourself to take the right actions automatically, then I don't know what is. And I talk about this template. The template now is 20 years in development, and the latest iteration to it is I've created an AI algorithm where all you got to do is answer about 50 questions, press a button, and 10 seconds later, the template is customized to your unique life. And what I see goes on with people is if I say, well, the central concept of the top book in the world on success is to create immense clarity and feed the succinct articulation of your desired life to yourself every day, they're like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. But then they go, well, what do you mean clarity about myself and about my business and about my relationship? They don't really understand that level of clarity. And but they don't have to because I've thought about it for 20 years and it's in the template. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I like the description as a GPS template. GPS is very different than an old map. I remember a trip as a kid to Southern California where my dad was driving and my mom had this huge map spread out. She was trying to navigate to get us where we needed to go. And we kept missing exits because my mom was trying to figure out where we were on the map and find it. And by the time she figured out where we were driving right past the off ramp. And
Right.
it didn't work very well. And one of the challenges of a map like that is there is too much accurate and useful information, but it's not necessarily useful to you in that moment. And the difference with a GPS is that it separates signal from noise and it gets rid of all the other good information that's not pertinent to you. And it says, here is exactly where you need to go. So I think what you're describing, John, in this life GPS template is by answering questions that, and I've gone through this myself. These are not easy questions to answer. Many of these questions require some deep reflection and really considering what do I actually want in my life and how do I want to show up in my life. But by considering those and turning it into a document that you can read every day and think about every day and program the subconscious with every day, then you're sort of separating signal from noise. You're cutting out the clutter and you're only focusing on those behaviors that you most want in your life. Is that a fair
Right.
summation, John,
Yes,
or
I
would
think
you add
that's
something to
that's
that?
I think that's good. Let me explain the core science here. This will make it all sort of come together. So your conscious mind sets your intentions and is influenced by logic. Subconscious mind is controlling your daily actions, or 95% of them, and it's only influenced by repetition. And the classic example is losing weight. Conscious mind sets the intention to lose weight based on the logic of the health benefits. But the reason people fail to lose weight is not from lack of intention, it's from lack of influencing the part of their brain that is controlling their actions, specifically their eating and their exercise. And so that's why when you feed the succinct articulation of your desired life, which is going to have specifically the actions you need to take in each area of your life to achieve your goals and to create the life you want, that's the repetition the subconscious mind needs to make the right actions happen automatically after approximately 21 days. And it's amazing how precisely it seems to happen at the 21-day mark. 21 to 25 days, a light will go on, and all of a sudden you start seeing yourself doing the right things automatically. And once you experience that, your life is never the same.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
can I make a suggestion? Can I, obviously I had an amazing epiphany when I was 50. Are you up for creating an epiphany for you in particular, Eric, but everybody on the call? Are you game for this?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
So let me start by asking you, how many epiphanies have you had in your life that really changed your life?
Many.
So, like how, if you had to quantify it,
Oh, goodness. I don't know, probably at least 20 things that were real game changers for me.
right? Okay. Well, like in my case, I've had in my life four major epiphanies, and obviously one of them was, and the biggest was Think and Grow Rich and figuring out that secret. Um, and so here is the epiphany that I had. 95% of my daily actions are unconscious. So if my daily actions determine my success in each area of my life, I absolutely have to gain control over those unconscious daily actions. And so my question to you, Eric, do you believe that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious?
I do. Yeah, I can point to the science behind it.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. Um, when I'm on podcasts, it can go one of two ways. Either the host does not believe it, and I'm going to prove it in a minute, or they do believe it. And if they do believe it, then I will say, well, what are you doing about it? And more often than not, they're not doing anything about it, which tells me they believe it at a at some level, but they don't really believe it, because to me it's so simple to connect the dots that how could you not do something about it if you really believe that your actions determine your success and 95% of them are unconscious. And so um, that's typically what I see. And so because this is so foundational, let's ask ChatGPT about this. I think you'll find this interesting because it'll third party verify what I said. So see if you can hear this. G, are you there?
John, I'm here. How can I help?
So is it really true that 95% of a person's daily actions are unconscious?
Yes, it's widely believed that about 95% of our daily actions and thoughts are driven by our subconscious mind. This includes habits and routines we perform automatically without conscious thought.
So I understand that what's really happening is you unconsciously take an action, and then a couple of milliseconds later, you become conscious of it. Is that right?
Yes, that's a common understanding. Your subconscious often initiates actions, and then your conscious mind becomes aware of them shortly after. It's fascinating how our brains work.
So give us two quick examples.
Sure. One example is driving a familiar route. You might find yourself arriving at your destination without recalling every turn you made. Another example is typing on a keyboard. You often type without consciously thinking about each letter, relying on muscle memory.
Thank you. So again, let me emphasize what we just learned. You're taking the action unconsciously, meaning you're not controlling it. You don't have conscious control of the very thing that's determined your success. And then a nanosecond later, you're being aware of it. Because what happens with a lot of people is they go, I don't believe any of my actions are unconscious because I'm aware of everything I'm doing. Well, that's just not right. It's happening so almost instantaneously that you think that you're making taking the actions consciously and with intention, when in fact just the opposite is happening. And so, Eric, as you hear all this, now what's your takeaway?
I would say that where emotion goes, action flows.
Right?
And the emotional part of our brain, the limbic brain, has no capacity for language, and it's largely happening on autopilot. So if we can learn to influence that part of our brain more intentionally, then it's going to affect our actions day to day, minute by minute.
Right. And keep in mind, you're not changing the 95-5% ratio. If you're human, that's how it works. 95% of your daily actions are unconscious and 5% are conscious. And so I know you're in the middle of doing my methodology, but oftentimes what I see is just what I was saying earlier, that most people are winging life. First of all, they may or may not understand that the profound significance of 95% of your daily actions being unconscious. But once we can get them to see how significant that is, you got to gain control over it. And by feeding the succinct articulation of your desired life to yourself each day, which articulates all the things that you want to be doing in your career, in your marriage, in your health, that's the repetition the subconscious mind needs to make them happen automatically. And so just to put a bow on this, the epiphany that I want the audience to get, again, is that 95% of your daily actions are unconscious. And so if your actions determine your success in life, you have to gain control over those unconscious daily actions. That's the epiphany that changed my life.
And so the key to gaining control over them is to be able to succinctly articulate in writing, this is what I want in life. This is how I want to show up. This is how I want to feel in those moments. And then to engage in repetition, which is the way that the subconscious mind learns. And every day, first thing in the morning, before anything else clutters you, you deal with your set point in life, so to speak. You set the thermostat for life instead of just being a thermometer that's reactive to the environment. And you read that articulation.
Well, yes,
So,
and keep in mind, one of the things I meant to say, and this is a fundamental problem you have to overcome as a human being. You are innately wired for survival, which causes you to be innately fear-based and reactive. Well, that's exactly the opposite of how you need to be productive, creative, and happy. And so the effect is when your eyes open each morning, if you're not overriding being wired for survival, you're living your life fear-based and reactive. And I lived that way for 50 years. That's why people's negative inner voice exists. But once I started doing this, that negative inner voice goes away. And I mean goes away. I am passionate about this particular part of it because our head coach, Steve Sarkisian, and I have had long talks about this over here at my house. And I've shown him how we can get rid of that negative inner voice with the players. And so, but that's the fundamental thing you got to overcome as a human being is being wired for survival, which was great 50,000 years ago, but terrible for today. Does that make sense?
it makes perfect sense. And I think you're hitting on the fundamental reason why elite athletes sometimes choke.
Yeah.
Think about Greg Norman what was it, the 96 Masters, had a huge meltdown. He went in with a 6-stroke lead over Nick Faldo, and he ended up losing by 11 strokes in one round of golf because he basically stayed up Saturday night getting worked up. Essentially, his subconscious mind was getting programmed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. There's no way that he should have lost that. But his negative voice came to the podium and said, oh no. So if you can silence that, it's incredibly powerful, not only in athletics, but every aspect of life. So John, a couple of questions, and then we need to open it up for a live Q&A. Question number one is, where can people go to access the template? And then we'll go to question two.
So just go to www.themissingsecret.org, themissingsecret.org, and you'll see a 9-minute video that explains the full secret of Think and Grow Rich and the science behind it and how to apply my methodology. And you can also buy my book, The Missing Secret. You can buy it on Amazon. It's called The Missing Secret of the legendary book Think and Grow Rich. And in the book, it gives you the code to get to the template, which is on my website. So that's how it works. And one thing I would say before I forget to say it, a few years ago, I decided I was going to show this to the top expert in the world on success, because I want to see if there was anything similar to it, or if there was any flaws in it. And so I decided to, whoever that person was, man or woman, I'm showing it to them. If I'm going to spend the rest of my life on this, I want to be open to what I hear. So I decide Darren Hardy is the guy. And so I write a big check. Ginger goes with me. We go out to La Jolla, California, spend 3 days with him. The moment comes to show him this template and explain how it works. And he looks at it and goes, wow, this is really good. But he says, John, people aren't going to spend 12 minutes a day on this. And I'm like, Darren, how can that be? It 25x my income. Time magazine did a cover story on the science behind it. And we're applying the central concept of the top book in the world on success to people's lives. I mean, what do you mean they're not going to spend 12 minutes a day on it? He says, John, the dirty little secret of the success business is that more success is merely a preference for the vast majority of people, for 98% of the people. He says, this is only appropriate for the 2% who are really driven for success. And that changed my approach, because I thought it was for, up until that point, I thought it was for everybody. And then that made me realize, oh, it's only for the 2%. And it changed how what evolved was I started finding people like me who were making 200 grand a year that wanted to make $1 million. And I started coaching them, and to lure them in, I would give them a money back guarantee that if I couldn't double their income within a year, I'd give them their money back. And so the minimum requirement was they had to be netting at least $200,000 a year. And I'd charge them like $20,000 and teach it to them over 8 weeks. And they typically would get a 40 to 1 return on their money over 3 years. But it totally changed my understanding of who this is for.
Yeah, thank you. It's a helpful thing to call out right at the outset, that not everybody's going to do this.
Right.
It takes some discipline.
Right.
So the other question that I was going to ask you is, you've talked a lot about what happens at the beginning of the day to program the subconscious mind. Is there anything that we should be doing at the end of the day?
Well, I think for the enlightened group that you've got, your group, I am totally impressed by what you guys are doing and your whole organization. I think it is first rate. Like you and I have talked about, you deal with the hardware of the brain. I deal with the software of the brain, and I see how powerful that is, because your brain is the most powerful and most valuable asset you have, but nobody ever really taught you how to use it. And so that's why I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you for that. And we're sure grateful that you're part of A Mind for All Seasons and that you would take time to present here in our masterclass. I know there's a lot more that you could say, John. There's certainly a lot more in your book, which I've read and recommend that others check it out. But let's take a few minutes and see what questions some of those who are here live might have for you, John.
Okay.
We'll give people a minute. Feel free to
You know
turn the camera on and or unmute.
As let me say a question that I sometimes get. Does this work on everybody? Well, it's pure science. If you're human, it works. And one other thing I might also add is, and this is my life experience, I just see that in life, you got to have something that gives you an edge, that gives you an advantage in life. And I didn't find that edge until I was 50. But I mean, and again, this is just my life experience. If you don't have something that gives you an edge, you're likely going to get the average life. That was certainly my experience. And so this is all about working smarter, not working harder.
Yeah. I also think, John, that if we're not clear about our future self and who we are working to become, then we don't have a good enough filter for the present. We don't know what to say yes to and what to say no to if we have no clarity about what we're becoming.
Right. Well, and one other thing we talked about Darren Hardy, and this is pure Darren Hardy. He says that the differentiator between the mega successful and the moderately successful is control of self and focus. Well, what is control of self? Well, it's your daily actions. Well, what is focus? Your thoughts. Well, this is exactly what this methodology does. And again, most people are winging life, and so they're fear-based and reactive, and this applies that differentiator into your life so that you're playing like the mega achievers play.
Yeah, thank you. Carol says, just wondering, how do you recommend retirees apply this strategy? Life is
Carol,
not over, so what do you do?
Carol, that's a great question, because when I was 50, it was all about achievement, achievement of financial security, finding my wife, and I see that that's one level of this. But the other level is it's truly a spiritual experience when you feed the succinct articulation of your desired life to yourself each day. It puts your life in perspective. Even though you're retired, you no doubt have something that is driving you. You got to have something that is driving you, and you got to sort of find a new mission. And so, but I find today the spiritual side of it, to me, is what's most important, because I want to operate from a consciousness of love, and I want to see how that plays out. I want to be um, thoughtful of other people, and I just want to that's money has no real meaning to me, and so that's not a concern. But how I show up in the world and the good I do very much is, and that's a spiritual experience that is refined through creating this life GPS template.
It's definitely something interesting to think about, and many of us here are concerned about health and health of family, and kind of trying to maybe reframe that in other ways that could be more useful,
right,
opposed to just going through life with on autopilot.
Right. Well, and I see in the success business, the place I feel like my niche is, it's an actual way of doing life, Whereas all the things you see in the success industry is this strategy or that strategy. And oftentimes very good strategies, but people have great strategies coming out their ears. How do you get great strategies to show up in your thoughts and actions? You know, that's what this methodology does. And that was the problem with Think and Grow Rich, is how do you apply it? He doesn't explain how to apply it. And that's what I think I bring to the table, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Matt, you've got a question.
John, so as I understand it, it sounds like the day, to apply this protocol, the day would start with some meditation or prayer or maybe a combination. Could you give us an example of maybe just a fictitious person utilizing this? What would their morning look like? Or if they were doing an evening meditative session, could you kind of just give us a vision of what that would look like for the person applying it?
Well, the way it really works is you do this first thing in the morning. And I mean first thing. You wake up, you probably go to the bathroom, you come back, and then you grab your Life GPS template and you take 12 minutes and read it. Or you can listen to it. Like I put on my headphones and I can listen to it. And there's a system that allows it to be in your own voice. And so 6 of the 7 days of the week, I just turn on my vibrating bed and lay back down and hear my succinct articulation of my desired life. And it is powerful. And then I'll get ready, and then I'll take, before I really start my work, I will do about 5 minutes of meditation and breathing. But that's how I do it. And Eric, back to your question, what might you do at the end of the day? It's really up to you. I have people that will read it in the morning and listen to it in the evening. It's sort of, you don't have to do that, but some people do that.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Bridget has a good question here. She says, can you expand a little more on feelings and emotions and how this plays into it and how to apply it? So if I'm understanding that correctly, Bridget, maybe an example of how you would articulate something in your Life GPS template related to emotion, and then how that ends up showing up in the day. I know you have lots of examples of that in the book.
Right. Well, one of the ways that we do it on the written page is we'll say the same word twice, because when you say it twice, you can give special emphasis to it. And let me think, like one of the things I try and do is to say, when I meet somebody, I try to say their name, their first name, 3 times in the conversation, because especially, well, it really doesn't matter, but particularly if I've just met them, I want to develop a closeness to them. And so in my Life GPS template, I may say to myself, I make it a point to say every person's name, and I mean every person I meet, say their first name when I meet them, and then 3 times in the conversation. But if I'll repeat the key word or 2 or 3 words, that's where I can really drive that emotion in a way that I can't if I just say it once.
So there's the principle of repetition again.
Right. Right.
Reading the Life GPS template every day is one part of repetition, but even repeating specific words in it helps. And if I'm right, John, doesn't your algorithm kind of help, or your template itself that you created through ChatGPT helps make sure that there's repetition of some of those words?
Right. Right. And some of the words you'll actually say out loud as opposed to reading it. If you're reading it, and just so everybody understands this template, so on the front is the ideal you and the 5 key areas of your life: yourself, your health, your romantic relationship, your spirituality, your career. So ideal you in those 5 key areas. On the back is the same 5 areas, but the improvements you want in each area of your life. And you will have your top 3 goals. Now you'll start living your life quarter by quarter. So you have a new goal for your career, new goal for your marriage, new goal for your health. And you'll define, here is the goal, here's the why behind the goal, here's the 3 or 4 key behaviors associated with the goal, here's the measurement. And then every Sunday morning, I have an app that you can get at the App Store, and you will evaluate your performance on your key behaviors. And so it's all pretty slick.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, I know we're about at the end of our time. There's one last question, John, that I'm going to ask sort of preventively, because some people are probably going to grab a copy of the book and want to look at the Life GPS template and that sort of thing. And this is kind of a takeoff from Carol's question. When I looked at the Life GPS template, it's basically designed for people who are working, and they're either owning a business and they're an entrepreneur, or they're working within a business, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Right.
But what template should someone select if they're retired, but they're wanting to feed themselves the succinct articulation of their ideal life?
Well, I think probably you have the option to select I work for somebody, or I am an entrepreneur. You also have the option to select I'm in a romantic relationship, or I'm not, because which way you select changes the nature of the template. But I think even if people are retired, I don't understand the idea of retirement. I mean, you got to have something that is driving you forward. So whatever that maybe you don't call it your career, maybe it's your passion, in that section. But I think that's the way you would do it.
So living an ideal life is your job, and you're the entrepreneur steering that ship.
Right. And one thing I would also say for the people that are still in that mode of creating their wealth, one of the things that happened with me was when I was in my mid 50s and I was blessed to be making 25 times the 200 grand a year I was making the prior year, I was very observant of why it's just happening. And so I saw that it was a combination really of 2 factors. The first one is I started doing like what I call 3 or 4 key behaviors consistently. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, I was a 10 on organization, where I would plan my day the night before and I would time block my day, because I saw that being highly successful starts with being highly organized. And so often people are a 5 or 6 on organization. Boy, you got to fix that. Then the second thing is you got to set aside time to deep think, to just step away from your life a couple times a week and think. I mean, this is a habit the top entrepreneurs in the world do. Well, I wasn't doing that in my 30s and 40s. And then the other one was you had to be a conduit of learning, where you have the wisdom of experts flowing into your head consistently every week, and it's got to be strategic relative to what you want to accomplish. Well, and I created a simple system using podcasts today for that. Well, I wasn't doing that in my 30s and 40s. And then the other part of it was I'm feeding to myself in the template 6 things about my business, my succinct business plan, my strategy for success, the 2 or 3 things that move the needle, where I want my business to be 3 years from now, the 4 or 5 milestones to get there and the linchpin issue to go to the next level. Well, when you're feeding all that to yourself every day, you're having a deeper and deeper understanding of your business, what your strategy for success is, what the plan is, what's moving the needle. All distractions fall by the wayside, and you're also now able to do those key behaviors that you never did before. And I see that like when I was 40, I thought, well, I'm just going to do my best. This is a change that happened. Well, I thought doing my best was just getting up at 6 in the morning. How unenlightened is that? Then I realized that in my mid 50s, that doing my best was the things I just talked about, being highly organized and planning my day the night before and taking time to step back and think and be a conduit of learning and understanding how the human mind works and focusing on what moves the needle, and of course putting in the effort. But once I started doing all those things and defined that as doing my best, the results were radically different than when I was 40, thinking it was just effort.
Well, there's a whole lot of gold nuggets in what you just said, John. That was awesome. Okay. Well, we could go on. There's a lot more that we could talk about, but I hope everybody has gotten the key idea here that it's very different to live by design than it is to live by default. And when you are intentionally programming your subconscious mind through repetition with the daily actions and thoughts that you want to be having in order to fulfill your ideal life, that's when the magic happens. And I think that is a very powerful tool that we can all use as we lean into the enhanced protocol and everything else that we're striving to do to have optimal health and well-being throughout our lives. So, John, thank you from all of us. We're so grateful that you would take your time and share this great information and your own personal experiences with us. And
could I share one final story?
Yeah,
that maybe people will find interesting, and this will maybe put your life in perspective. A few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we had our first grandbaby, and so I coerced my stepdaughter to name her after Ginger. And so the day after baby Genevieve was born, we go over there and to Hannah's house, and there's a lot of oohing and eyeing over the baby. And for some reason, they hand me the baby, and Ginger and Hannah walk away. So I'm holding this precious little girl. She's a day old, holding her close to my heart, and I feel the warmth of her body, and I start crying. I mean, tears are flowing down my face because I realize how precious life is, and she's going to live to be 100, and the quality of her life is going to come down to the quality of the thoughts that are going on in her head. That's going to determine both her success in life and her enjoyment of life. And so the lesson I think from that story is your life is precious. And just when you put your head on the pillow tonight, just think about if the next 5 years of your life are like the last 5 years, will you be satisfied with that? And if the answer is no, you've now learned a way to do life instead of just winging life. You have to stop winging life and live life with intention and create the life you want. It only takes 12 minutes a day.
thank you, John. It's a great thought to end on. I hope you all have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. And I hope to see many or all of you back next Friday for another masterclass here to Mind for All Seasons.